This question is from Paul Calamata. You've often mentioned on your podcast it's becoming more difficult for console manufacturers to reduce prices due to transistor costs not coming down at the same rates that they did in the past, creating situations like the PS5 Pro where Sony was able to deliver a mid-gen refresh but at a substantially increased cost. At the same time, the rate of graphical improvements gen on gen has also slowed down considerably, and we're in an age of diminishing returns with the leap in power provided by each new generation. Would the logical solution to both of these trends simply be to extend the generations for longer than they have lasted in the past? If you can't deliver a compelling next-gen experience every 7 years for $400, wouldn't it just be better for everyone, consumers and platform makers, to deliver that next-generation experience every 10 to 12 years instead? 10 to 12 years, that's pretty extreme, isn't it, Alex?
That's a very long time, especially in the GPU space. Seeing the differences there. Look at 12. I mean, the rate of progression has slowed down due to the cost of shrinking dies going up, but you still see a large progression in terms of how much more powerful a CPU or GPU was between the last 12 years, for example. Very large difference. And I think that would be almost too long. I think we talked about it before, the introduction of a more phone-like model of upgrading GPUs get upgraded to some way to get revenue back in and show differences, but still have games be produced for a wide variety of machines to cover a large install base. I think that's probably more reasonable than waiting that long to release a new generation where everyone transitions over to it. I think it's just going to be a lack of generations for a while where it's like more fluid and there's more iterative upgrades. Because right now, based upon the PS5 Pro's GPU things, like the things that it's added into its GPU, the PS6 is actually going to be, by necessity, more iterative than it would have been otherwise had the Pro not existed. In fact, more so than probably the difference between PS4 Pro and PS5, where it's actually markedly different in a lot of ways. PS6 is actually going to be very similar to PS5 Pro, just with a different CPU and some more GPU features. So I think that's what it's going to be, iterative and not defined console gen start.
Okay, interesting. What do you make of this, Oliver?
Maybe, but I think it would probably take the form of an extended cross-gen as opposed to like really lengthening those generational transitions in a strict sense. I think that the PS5 will be around for many years to come, and I think there will be a very extended cross-gen period, even perhaps relative to what we saw at the beginning of this generation, which itself was a very extended cross-gen period. And absent, I think, the kinds of like really crazy AI developments that we might see, but maybe won't see in kind of constrained console hardware, I think that like the next $500 console is probably not going to be, that crazily different from the last $500 console, at least relative to what we've seen in the past in terms of that increase in performance capability. So I think that's a real constraint there. But I would personally expect to still see a PS6 in the next 4 years or so. But I would expect that software for the PS6 to have a wider degree of continuity, and for there to be relatively few cross-gen, or rather relatively few next-gen exclusives on that hardware, just because of the cost of development and because of the reality that you need to target a very wide range of consumers, and that the next-gen consoles won't do that immediately, and that especially if they're priced at a high level to actually give you that generational boost that you're looking for, that prospect is going to be a little bit more challenging than it has been in the past to get people to switch consoles.
I don't know what to make of this because, what can I say? The fact that the PlayStation 5 is still $500 is hugely problematic. It means that you can't address the same number of people as you have in the past because you can't cost reduce the console. Maybe the solution is to come up with a longer generation. I just think it's slightly disappointing that the PlayStation 5 generation essentially just missed out on machine learning based silicon, because that is basically going to be the future of scalability. And I'm 99% sure that this is what Microsoft is talking about when it talks about the greatest generational leap from one console generation to the next. I kind of think that the ultimate solution for this is to create games that do run on as many systems as possible. and to introduce scalability into the software in that respect. So, as shocking as it is, perhaps the future is cross-gen as such. The next generation, who knows what they're going to do there? I mean, what is the next big frontier? It does all seem to be machine learning based. How long should this generation persist? I just don't know. I think the problem is just the cost of making these things at this point. That's the real issue. And I think that the concept of subsidizing a piece of hardware in order to grow a user base doesn't seem to be working. That's problematic. I guess that the only solution at that point is to more heavily embrace PC, where competition drives down prices. But I don't know what to say about this. Maybe Alex's way forward of moving to some sort of iterative model would make more sense. And then you'd have kind of like what happens with Apple devices, where, you have various cutoff points for various classes of devices for games. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not sure 10 to 12 year console generations is the way to do it, to be honest, because the one thing that consumers do want is access to the latest and greatest technology. When you look at what happens with the smartphone industry, for example, it's quite, remarkable just how often people upgrade and then don't make use of the features that the phone provides. We're seeing it with the AI stuff at the moment. I don't know is my answer to this question. There's a big existential question facing the whole concept of consoles, I think, going forward.